To combat the economic decline caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the government between 2020 and 2022 made an unprecedented decision, allowing citizens to withdraw their retirement savings from their employer provident funds accounts up to 4 times. These withdrawals would have seen the average EPF member withdraw between 31,000 ringgit to 81,000 ringgit, amounting to 145 billion ringgit in total. And now, more than half of EPF members aged under 55 have less than 10,000 ringgit in their accounts, and about 25% of them with less than 1,000 ringgit. Now, something big is on the horizon. Where does this line of withdrawals lead to for those who have withdrawn a chunk of their retirement savings? And what does it have to do with Malaysia's status as an aging nation? According to the United Nations, a country is considered an aging society when its people aged 65 and above make up at least 7% of the country's total population, a threshold Malaysia crossed in the year 2020. As of 2022, the population in Malaysia now stands at 7.3%, officially making Malaysia an aging nation. And that figure is expected to rise even further. Estimates show that by 2044, it will be at 14%, and that will grow to 20% by 2056. The Department of Statistics has said that Malaysia's aging population is growing at a faster than expected rate. And with an aging population comes along a few issues. As the Department of Statistics highlighted, the potential risk of old age income security. This is where those EPF withdrawals have alarmed bells, and the accounts of those aged under 55 now looks something like this. And with Malaysia's now aging society continuing to grow in size, it means that those to their retirement age are at risk of not being able to retire at all.
The EPF, they said that because of the withdrawals, EPF members will now have to work an extra 4 to 6 years. If we want people to retire later, unfortunately our health trends aren't great. We have high rates of NCDs, such as diabetes. So this also increases the burden on our future healthcare system. There will be a lot fewer working people. Previously in the 80s, we had about 16 working age persons for every one elder, but this dropped to 10 persons today and further to just 3 in 2060. This shrinking workforce can affect government revenue and sources.
EPF recently suggested at least 600,000 ringgit for those retiring in the next few years to be able to retire comfortably, but suggested to actually live a more comfortable retirement life, you would need at least 1 million ringgit. But that's only possible if you retire in 20 to 30 years' time. At present, for those retiring in the next few years, only about 4% of Malaysians could afford to retire at the new 600,000 ringgit benchmark. If we look at the reality of the situation, a retirement life is starting to look bleak for many. And that's not only for those with depleted EPF accounts. EPF members only make up just 1/3 of our 23 million working age population, and 60% of the working population are estimated to not be under any retirement schemes. Currently, the absolute poverty line is 2,208 ringgit, and the relative poverty line is 2,936 ringgit. And according to the 2022 Household Income, Expenditure and Basic Amenities Survey, relative poverty rate stood at 16.2% in 2020.
This goes back to our social protection framework. Ideally, you would have a country with the 3 Ps in place, so which are the social safety nets, social insurance, as well as labor market policies. Even though in Malaysia we do have the second pillar, which covers social insurance like pensions and income insurance schemes, this is somewhat lacking because it doesn't really encompass all of the labor force within Malaysia. The bulk of protection actually goes into our first pillar, which is the social safety net. This is when we think about cash transfers, when we think about housing benefits, when we think about subsidies.
Many countries around the world have social protection schemes in place as a means to ensure their citizens are duly protected from all aspects of life. Malaysia too has a few, like the EPF, SOCSO, the Workers' Insurance Scheme, and even public healthcare. The structures for Malaysia are there, but it's not inclusive enough.
It is also important for the government to be looking at protection for also the informal workers, especially when the informal sector would absorb most of the labor force in Malaysia in its share. there has been a move in recent years to include certain programs to protect the housewives as well as those in the gig economy, especially with different matching grants. But then it goes back on how these social protection plans will be funded in the near future. Is it going to be still with matching grants? Because again, we know that this is not sustainable in the medium to long term.
It would be an enormous task for whoever comes into government next to address potentially worsening poverty levels than we currently have, and craft more inclusive social protection schemes that takes into account every single person in Malaysia. But how would that look like? When we look forward, there is a big question mark about the way our social security looks like for all Malaysians.
Really, they have to think about how to increase taxes in a fair manner, of course. Things that they consider is firstly by increasing the top marginal income tax rate, especially for the ultra high income bracket. Another thing that they should be looking into is taxing capital gains more widely, because that's how a lot of the ultra rich get their money from. Lastly, something that may not actually generate money right now, but could be beneficial for future administration of public service is making income tax declarations mandatory. This improves transparency and of the government understanding of what people are earning and help make better planning as well.
The EPF does have a contribution program, Saraan, for members to voluntarily replenish their accounts and rebuild their retirement savings. Again, this is voluntary. In truth, the EPF can only do so much to help replenish accounts. The reality is that this situation is bound to happen. It is now in the hands of whoever comes into power next to cushion the impacts as much as possible and lay down the foundations for better, comprehensive, and inclusive social protection in the long run. Social protection would take years of proper planning for it to take effect, but it can help ensure nobody in Malaysia will ever need to go through this again in the future.